Up next, we move from AI ambition to the infrastructure that must support it. Ladies and gentlemen, every technological revolution is ultimately limited by the strength of the infrastructure beneath it. And artificial intelligence is no exception. As nations, businesses, and institutions race to deploy AI at scale, one question becomes increasingly important. Can the infrastructure we depend on remain trusted, secure, and resilient? Because AI is only as strong as the networks, systems, and digital foundations that support it. For decades, Cisco has helped build and secure the infrastructure powering the global digital economy. Today, as AI becomes part of critical business operations, public services, and national competitiveness, the challenge is no longer simply innovation, it is resilience. Please welcome Matthew Houlihan, Vice President, Government Affairs Europe at Cisco, with his keynote, Securing the AI Era, Collaborative Resilience for Digital Infrastructure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Houlihan. I'm the Vice President for Government Affairs at Cisco, and I run the Government Affairs team right across Europe. It's my second Webit. It's wonderful to be back in Sofia. What a wonderful city you have. And it's great to be working with Cisco's local team here in Sofia to help deliver some of those AI ambitions that we heard from the ministers earlier. I couldn't be more proud. We've heard already today about the amazing pace of AI development. And you can see that over the past 3 or so years, we've seen such a transformation in the technology, not only in terms of its capability, but also its deployment. To illustrate this, according to Stanford University's 2026 AI Readiness Report, $344 billion was spent in or invested in AI in 2025, and that was a twofold increase over the figure for 2024. We rarely see that sort of exponential change in the technology world or in the economic world, and so we're really living in the middle of something quite phenomenal at the moment. In a similar survey that they ran, they showed that 91% of organizations in Europe said they were proactively using some form of AI in 2025. And that was up from 57% in 2023. So again, a near doubling in terms of the proactive use of AI. And I firmly believe that those use cases will continue to grow and we'll get deeper into this trend as we go along. So a lot of excitement and a lot of interest in AI. Now, you might be wondering why I've put a postcard of a small northern town in England called Barnsley on the slides here. Well, one of the things I'm passionate about is making sure that this technology is as beneficial to as many people as it can possibly be. And I think that is the great challenge of our time, is when we live through these technological transformations, is making sure that places like Barnsley, and I'll tell you about that in a second, can benefit. Now, Barnsley's not a wealthy place. Barnsley has about half the GDP per capita of the rest of the UK. It's a former mining town. It had a glass industry. It had a textiles industry. But much of that is gone now. And what we need to do, I think, as a government community and as a business community, particularly those working in artificial intelligence, is focus not only on the big cities, the Londons, the New Yorks, the San Franciscos, but also the Barnsleys of this world to make sure we're spreading the benefit there. But what can we do, and how should we think about opening up opportunities for places like that? Well, I think there are 6 broad pillars that are the foundation sort of building blocks of what being ready for AI means. And I know some other speakers are going to cover some of this later as well. But I think any organization, whether they're in Barnsley or elsewhere, need to have strategy. That has to come from the top of the organization. You need to have leaders of organizations that are willing to take some bold bets in terms of how they want to use AI to change workflows, to change their organizations and do things differently, more productively. You need the infrastructure. AI requires much more capability in terms of digital infrastructure. There's a lot more data that's passing through. And so you really need to think about your infrastructure and your secure infrastructure as part of that. You need your data in a format that can be used with your AI systems to make the most of it. You need to understand the governance. You need to understand things like data protection laws and other local regulations that are important to making sure you're operating within regulatory guardrails. And most importantly, I would say, you need the talent. You need your employees to really come on the journey with you, and you need the culture as well in that space. You need them to have the skills to work with AI tools. Cisco runs every year now what we call a Cisco AI Readiness Index, and it's a survey of thousands of companies right around the world. And one of the striking things that we see every single year is that, I'll just give you one statistic from it, 95% of the organizations that responded felt an urgent need to deploy AI, so they could see the prize, they could see the need to do it. But based on these 6 foundations, these 6 building blocks, only 14%, 14%, felt that they were fully prepared to do so. So I think at an organizational level, there's a lot of reflection that's needed, a lot of strategizing that's needed, and a lot of action that's needed to be fully ready. Now, I'm going to focus on one of those building blocks in a slightly more deeper dive. Infrastructure. It's so critical, we think at Cisco, to enable that AI opportunity and that AI growth right around the world. But guess what? We do need a step change in the capability of our digital infrastructure if we're going to take full advantage of this. We published a report a couple of weeks ago now that predicted that in just 3 years, we'll see a 3-fold increase in the amount of internet traffic due to AI, so by 2029. And things like agentic AI, which the speaker from Visa just talked about very eloquently, will be a big driver of that. In fact, Gartner recently predicted that every Fortune 500 company, on average, will have 150,000 agents working for it by 2028. That's just around the corner. And I can say that looking at how companies like Cisco and Visa are using agentic AI, I think that's quite a conservative forecast. I think it will be much bigger than that, actually. Agentic AI agents, it's kind of amazing. It's like waking up and being told that you can hire 1,000 co-workers to help you automate some of the tasks that you need to do. And I think it really is an industry trend that we'll see a lot more of. But guess what? Each of those agents, on average at the moment, generates 5 times more traffic than a human employee does. And so with leaning into that agentic AI future comes a real need to think about what the infrastructure opportunities are, or what the infrastructure needs are to support that. And so guess what? When we survey our customers, 76% of them said that they needed network upgrades. Now, Cisco is a big company focused on security as well as infrastructure, and we think the two things have to go hand in hand. But obviously, AI changes the game a little bit in terms of how we should think about security. It generates new challenges. It also creates new opportunities. And that infrastructure doesn't count for anything unless it is super secure. Think about the patient's health data or the financial information that the speaker from Visa just talked about. We need to make sure that that information, which is critical to people's well-beings or people's financial futures, is secure as those agents or as those AI tools deal with it. I looked, in preparation for this talk, you can look at a great database that the US authorities maintain, and they track the number of vulnerabilities, the number of security flaws that are flagged up to the agencies in the US. And you can see how the trends evolve year on year. And guess what? There's been a rapid rise recently in the number of vulnerabilities, these security flaws in software or infrastructure, that have been reported officially to this US vulnerability database. So you can see there that the figure for 2021 was something like 20,000 vulnerabilities, which is still a large figure, right? But by 2025, just last year, that had gone up to 50,000. And so quite a huge increase there in quite a short space of time. One of the big factors that we're worried about right now at Cisco is what we call legacy technology. It is the big volume of infrastructure that's out there that frankly is not being supported by the folks that sell it. It's not being upgraded. It's not being patched in terms of security software in the way that it needs to be in order to make it safe. And we call that legacy technology. But guess what? The 40% of those top 100 exploited vulnerabilities impact legacy technology. And so we think because of the way that AI is evolving and this huge technical debt we have because of legacy technology, we need to really talk with urgency about the need to address that very, very quickly. And so that's why Cisco is introducing new products like things like Defense Claw, which tries to automate the provisioning of new AI agents to ensure that they operate within your organization's security boundaries. And we think approaches like that are critical to making a success of AI opportunities. People will simply lose confidence in the technology if we don't ensure that it's resilient and secure from the outset. And a big part of that is, yes, the software, but also the infrastructure that we work with as well. Now, I introduced myself as the Vice President for Government Affairs, and another thing I'm passionate about and a firm believer in is that these opportunities will only come about if businesses like Cisco, who are developing the technologies that underpin this AI revolution, go hand in hand, and we work hand in hand with policymakers. We can do a lot as the private sector, and you've seen the amount of investment that's being made by the private sector, particularly in the US. But we need to work hand in glove with policymakers who hold so many of the levers in terms of creating those ecosystems, as the minister talked about earlier, and enabling everyone to benefit from these wonderful technologies. So I think thinking about what those partnerships look like and how we work with governments, I would say we need to have the trusted partnerships. We need to be looking at things like AI security institutes. Governments need to be investing in those to create the capabilities to understand security risks with AI. And businesses need to partner with them on that to make sure that we're sharing the right information, we're sharing knowledge with governments on that in a secure and trusted way. Skills is so important. I talked about how organizations need to skill up in terms of their employees. And businesses can do so much of that. In fact, Cisco has a wonderful networking academy that we've run now in Bulgaria and around the world since 1999. And in fact, in Europe, we've had over 5 million European citizens taking our networking academy courses in things like networking and cybersecurity and now AI. And we're super proud of the impact that has had and the opportunity that's creating. But obviously, we need governments to be really tuning into what AI means for national curricula as well. We need universities to be doing that too. We need to see investments in innovation and infrastructure. So things like the EU gigafactories are a really interesting development, and we should see over the summer how the funding from an EU level will play out in terms of that. But we need all governments, I think, to be investing and stimulating private sector investment in the right sort of AI infrastructure. Yes, we need regulation and standards. They're really important to make a success of AI. And we need governments to think about adoption, particularly to look at the barriers that smaller companies face when they try and adopt AI. Is it a price thing? Is it a skills thing? Is it a confidence thing? And to think about what national programs can help small companies in particular adopt these technologies that will help them grow, help them export, help them expand, help them employ more people. So we think that's really important. So let me wrap up by coming back to Barnsley. As I said, I think it's these sorts of places that we need to focus on as a policymaking community, as a business community, to make sure we're spreading those benefits of AI as broadly as possible. And we can only do that if they can benefit from infrastructure, but they can do that in a secure way as well. They need to have the confidence in the technology. So I'm really proud to say that Barnsley, earlier this year, announced itself as the UK's first tech town. And with that came support from the national government, but also partnerships with companies like Cisco, who are now working with local hospitals, local colleges, to provide infrastructure and to provide the skills that the people of Barnsley need to create new job opportunities, to create 21st century public services, and to really embrace the AI opportunity that's ahead of us. Thank you very much.